Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
When shopping for your family's meals, do you know where you can find Alaska-grown products? Everywhere. They're available at your local grocery stores and farmers markets across the state. Alaska-grown products are fresher and more nutritious, and buying local helps grow our economy. So just look for the Alaska-grown label when you shop, or ask your grocer where the Alaska-grown products are. Remember, Alaska-grown. It's closer, fresher, better.
And it's all Alaska-grown.
The National Weather Service.
And good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 28th of June. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that at weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. Now, as we've been talking about for several weeks now, websites are going to change on July 6th, and we'd like you to try those out before we get to the 6th to make sure that you know how to find the information and that you're ready to see what the information is going to look like on our new websites. And you can check those out right now, tonight, if you want to. If you don't want to watch the weather tonight, we'd like you to stick around, but pull up the laptop if you can, or take a look at this a little bit later this evening. w2.weather.gov is how you start each one of these websites, and then /AFC for Anchorage, AFG for Fairbanks, and AJK for Juneau. Now, there's no sense in bookmarking these just yet because they're going to change after the 6th. They'll change over to our regular website at weather.gov/Anchorage or weather.gov/Fairbanks or /Juneau. So don't bookmark anything just yet, but go to these websites and poke around a little bit and see if you can make it work and see how your weather information is going to change a little bit. And we hope that it's good improvements for you and that you'll get used to using it this new way here, and we'll offer more services as we continue to go along. In the meantime, here's a look at the fire danger across Alaska. You'll notice up around Haines, there's a little bit of high fire danger there across the very northern part of southeast Alaska. Just haven't had enough rain to really tamp all that down just yet. Around the Copper River Basin, high levels of fire danger there, as well as the upper and middle Yukon Valley. And then areas, once you get into the Kotzebue Sound region, the Kobuk Valley, we're certainly seeing some extreme fire danger in those areas. It's pretty limited, but the fire danger is still on the higher to extreme side there, as well as parts of the Yukon Delta region and into the lower Kuskokwim around Bethel and northward towards some of our villages in the Yukon Kuskokwim region. Now, here's a look at the visible satellite picture, and several things are going on here. We still have our persistent low across the Gulf of Alaska. It's still fairly nice across southeast Alaska, and south central is getting the northern fringe of this, where we're getting easterly waves and moisture working in from the north, and you can see the bubbling action here of daytime heating and moisture creating showers and at times thunderstorms. The thunderstorms widely scattered again across the interior. Last several days have been a plethora of lightning across the region. Just fantastic to watch, and even hail around the Fairbanks area. Remember your lightning safety rules for thunderstorms. At the very earliest sign of thunder and lightning, go inside and stay away from electrical appliances. If you see hail, we'd love to know about it, but don't go outside and grab it while it's still falling. Wait for the storm to pass and wait for thunder and lightning to end, about 30 minutes before it's safe to go back outside. That sounds a little extreme, but when you remember that lightning can travel away 10 to 12 miles away from that thunderstorm, well, it's no surprise that we hear about bolts from the blue sometimes when the thunderstorm is way, way over there and somehow that lightning bolt stretches down and changes somebody's life. So be extra careful around thunderstorms, especially in Alaska, when we just don't hear about that many people having that much trouble with lightning. It is a problem, and one of these days it hopefully won't be a problem for you. Out across the west, you can see a lot of moisture still building around low pressure in the western Bering Sea. This southeasterly flow is bringing a lot more moisture into the central and western Bering, but high pressure is still in charge of the Chukchi all the way down to the southeastern Bering and into the western Gulf. And if you look carefully, you can see some of the very low clouds here across a large part of south central Alaska, across the northwestern parts of the Bering Sea and northwestern sections of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. That's low clouds and fog from areas that are a lot more stable under that ridge of high pressure. So we have dry air across the north, across the west, Bristol Bay, and into the western Gulf there, all under high pressure. That is holding back that next round of moisture from moving in from the north and western Pacific. So here's a look at the surface chart, and as it stands now, colder air is trying to work its way in from the Chukchi coast into the North Slope. We have warm air working its way north and east, and in between high pressure across Prince William Sound. And that next wave of colder air is widely scattered showers and thunderstorms developing again across the Yukon and Kuskokwim valleys. Out across the west, another wave of low pressure trying to work eastward. Remember, though, the high pressure is literally holding that back, so that's not going to go a whole lot further or northward in the next several days. Low pressure nearly stationary, not quite, but nearly stationary across the western Gulf. And then the showers wrapping around the northern fringe of that as they run into the coastal ranges and Kodiak Island southeast. So far, not really in that wetter part of that picture just yet. Now, as we get into tonight, that may change. You may see some of those showers creeping in a little bit more to some of the outer coast. High pressure doesn't move much. That's sitting at 1,024 millibars, and colder air is working its way southward across the North Slope. High pressure is still trying to hold on to that, and as it does, it looks like some areas will stay fairly dry and clear tonight. But just south of that, we'll have remaining showers across the lower Yukon and even the middle and upper Yukon valleys and the Kuskokwim Valley as we go through tonight. The frontal boundary out west is fallen apart by the overnight hours. You'll see periods of light rain. They're just west of St. Paul and St. George, all the way out to regions just south of the Gulf of Anadyr, and periods of light rain, fog, and drizzle should be expected across many parts of the Aleutians. We'll see that continue into Wednesday. That channel of heavier precipitation, it's not really heavy, but more persistent rainfall there just east of that boundary. And west of St. Paul and St. George, still an opportunity for some fog. Some of that could creep into the islands. A look northward shows a cold front advancing and spreading out a little bit more from west to east. It's dropping into the Brooks Range, and there it stops. Just not powerful enough really to drop over initially on Wednesday. On the south side of that is, again, another opportunity of widely scattered rain and thunderstorm clouds. Across southwest, a slightly better chance for some showers there, but we'll be watching for thunderstorms, and make sure you check the forecast again tomorrow before you head out. High pressure sitting across northeastern sections of the Gulf shifts just a little bit out of range of Prince William Sound, and that's going to change the flow a little bit for southeast, so expect a better chance for a few more coastal showers a little bit further south down the Panhandle, and low pressure will continue to sit and dawdle across the central and western part of the Gulf at 1,014 millibars there. For Thursday, the front up north drops southward just a little bit more. You can see it's snuck over the eastern part of the Brooks Range there. And with moisture working back in across more parts of south central, across more parts of the Alaska Range, there's probably a better chance for rainfall across many more areas across southwest, south central, and even southeastern Alaska as we get into Thursday and the end of the week. High pressure is working northward toward the Gulf of Anadyr. That's at 1,019 millibars on the eastern side of that, all the way up the Chukchi coast. There's a chance we'll see more fog, and low pressure across the western chain is still weakening, and it still has a boundary associated with it. It really hasn't moved very much in the last several days and probably won't for the next several, but it still has a better chance for rainfall on the eastern side of that, which could include Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, Unalaska, and out across the Gulf of Alaska. High pressure is probably going to stabilize things a little bit more south of Kodiak. You'll probably still see clouds, and you may have a better chance of fog as we head into Thursday and Friday. Here's a look at temperatures now. We're seeing readings today in the 50s and 60s around Prince William Sound. The same goes for southeast. Places like Haines and Skagway and Juneau all in the mid to upper 60s today. Lower 70s around Hyder late this afternoon. Lower 60s around Sitka. A fairly nice day. And it looked like most of the stations were VFR, so hopefully that's the weather you experienced today, because that's kind of the weather we saw on this end. It looked pretty nice. Temps around Prince William Sound again, not too bad. Whittier and Portage a little bit on the cooler side, 66 in Homer, almost 70 degrees, probably warmer than that just inland around Soldotna today. Anchorage was fairly mild, 70 plus for Talkeetna and Squentna up the road toward Healy. It was 63 degrees. 68 around Fairbanks, 71 in Eagle, low 70s around the Fort Yukon Flats. There's 68 around Arctic Village. And once you got north of Anaktuvuk Pass at 68 degrees, the flats of the North Slope were in the lower to mid 70s. Just a much warmer day than what you saw at the coast and those temperatures were in the 40s and 50s. Kotzebue Sound temperatures made it into the 40s and 50s as well. A few places like Deering made it up to 60 or better, 54 in Nome, 48 in Gamble, 72 as you get down into the Yukon Delta region out toward Bethel or so. It was as warm as 70 degrees, 62 or better around McGrath. Anvik also fairly mild today, lower to mid 60s around King Salmon, Dillingham 71. 50s and 60s for the Alaska Peninsula. Sand Point a little bit on the cooler side today. Same goes for St. Paul and St. George, closer to that cooler ridge of high pressure out across the Bering. And 40s and 50s for the central and western chain. Kodiak showing 54 by late afternoon. Overnight lows will stay in the 40s and 50s for most of the lower terrain. Some of the warmest weather will be up around the Yukon Flats, down into the middle Tanana Valley. Some of the coolest weather around Barrow, Wainwright in the mid 30s tonight, 49 in Nome. Bristol Bay looking at lows in the lower 50s. Dutch Harbor and Unalaska closer to 50 degrees tonight. South Central also in the lower to mid 50s. 52 in Kodiak and lower to mid 50s for most of Southeast. High temperatures tomorrow will be the warmest around the Yukon Flats to the middle Tanana Valley and Eagle once again, probably 80 or better in many of those locations. 50s and 60s for many in the south central coastal areas, including Kodiak, Prince William Sound. And once you get into the Alaska Bowl, the Susitna and Matanuska valleys, you're probably looking at temperatures in the upper 60s to lower 70s again. So a nice day again. Upper 60s for Bristol Bay, 56 in Kodiak, mid 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, and cooler still around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. For Southeast, look for highs in the lower to mid 60s tomorrow. Not too bad. 54 in Nome, 51 in St. Paul, Dutch Harbor and Unalaska closer to 52. IFR conditions are expected across the coastal areas of the Beaufort, Chukchi, all the way down the Bering coast. Most of the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta will have occasional conditions with MVFR or IFR tomorrow, but you'll see improvements there. Notice the improvements in Southeast as well. Hit and miss MVFR throughout the afternoon. A widely scattered area of thunderstorms across the interior, mainly along the main stem rivers, and IFR conditions north of the Bering Strait. Some of that could reach into areas north of Kivalina all the way around toward Point Hope, and IFR conditions south of Nikolsky and Dutch Harbor on Alaska. Pass conditions look pretty much okay tomorrow. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, we expect VFR conditions there. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we'll watch for thunderstorms to develop, and most of those areas could hover around MVFR, at least in the morning, maybe some improvements in the afternoon. Rainy Pass looks pretty good tomorrow. VFR conditions there. Watching for convection in Windy Pass, but otherwise VFR. Isabel Pass, we expect to see visual flight rule there. Mentasta Pass, VFR conditions are expected. As we get into Tanita Pass, expect VFR conditions with a chance for thunderstorms in the afternoon. Portage Pass should gradually improve during the daytime there. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see VFR through most of the day. As we look at freezing levels, you'll notice that cool pool of air sitting across the Gulf of Alaska that hasn't moved much. It's still there again tomorrow. 6,000 feet or lower is what we're looking at for freezing levels. And there's still plenty of warm air aloft across the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island. That's as high as 10,000 feet. So a lot of warmth sitting right across Alaska right now. Icing potential generally above 9 to about 10,000 feet if you can find it. Some of that stretches out into the Gulf. As far as land areas go, probably just east of Norton Sound into the middle Yukon Valley and upper Koyukuk Valley there. Watching for thunderstorms for isolated icing potential there and out across the eastern chain above 10,000 feet. The jet stream shows a ridge of high pressure that's worked its way out across the Seward Peninsula, and that is guiding winds across the Gulf, back across south central and southeast Alaska, and then pushing those right offshore again, and then wrapping them back around across the northern Arctic coast. Those wind speeds generally light, between 50 and 60 knots over land. At 9,000 feet, you can see a similar pattern, the ridge kind of laying over on its side, working its way out toward eastern Russia. The wind speeds across the Gulf between 20 and 30 knots. For west and southwestern Alaska, 15 to 20, and across the North Slope, 20 to 25. Elsewhere, they're fairly light across the interior. At 3,000 feet, there's that pattern again. The westerlies coming across the Aleutians at 25 to 30. Southerlies up the west coast, and westerlies a little bit more predominant there at 20 knots for the North Slope. Light wind speeds on the interior. And as far as turbulence goes, pretty limited stuff. Watch for some chop around the eastern Aleutians all the way out toward the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula, generally below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
Coming up on Destination Tomorrow, we take a look at NASA's Aviation Safety Program. We'll look back at some highlights of the program and find out what the future holds for aviation. All this and more next on Destination Tomorrow.
Judy, tell me a little bit more about the icing protection system. Do all planes have it?
There's what we call an anti-ice system where you don't allow the ice to grow at all. That's if you got a very hot leading edge. You see that in jets. Then there's a de-icing system which has pneumatic boots, that the boots will wrap around that leading edge, they'll inflate and pop the ice off. So you let the ice grow and then you got to get it off. The pneumatic boots are typically what you see with turboprop aircraft.
Does icing affect planes in, say, a warm climate?
Icing occurs everywhere. You've got to be aware of it. I've got a pilot friend who told me the worst icing he encountered was flying from Florida to the Caribbean in July at 16,000 feet. The worst icing he ever saw. But icing really can occur anywhere and any time. One of the things we do here at NASA is to have better designs. So maybe a system that would automatically turn on the ice protection system if a sensor goes out. The short-term solution is to train the pilots and educate them about how to detect icing, how to be aware of it, train them how to get out of the icing environment if and when they need to. Ideally, icing is a non-issue in the future. We're working to get there.
For many of us, fear is the biggest problem when it comes to flying. We thought it may be helpful to present you with some statistics that may or may not be helpful to those of you who are fearful flyers.
First, your chances of being involved in an aircraft accident are approximately 1 in 11 million, while your chances of being killed in an automobile accident are about 1 in 5,000, proving that the most dangerous part of your flight is the drive to the airport.
One last fact. Statistically, you have more of a chance of dying from the food served on board the flight than being involved in an aircraft accident.
Most people who have flown in an airplane have experienced turbulence. NASA is working on new warning systems to help pilots avoid dangerous turbulence. Paula Vaden has more.
If you've ever flown in an airplane, you are probably familiar with turbulence. Even for the most experienced flyers, the sudden, sometimes violent, irregular air motion can be an unsettling experience. In most cases, turbulence is merely an inconvenience that passengers and flight crews must endure. But in cases of severe turbulence, the violent shaking can not only cause serious injury to passengers and crew, it can also be fatal. In an effort to help aircraft avoid turbulence, researchers at NASA are testing new onboard aircraft systems. The Airborne Research Integrated Experiment System, or ARES, uses experimental systems that detect turbulence minutes before an aircraft encounters it. This new system may allow pilots to avoid severe turbulence, making flying safer. I spoke with Neil O'Connor in the Crew Systems branch at NASA Langley Research Center to find out more.
You can think of turbulence as any phenomenon in the atmosphere that's going to upset the airplane. Changes in wind that can cause the airplane to be disrupted from its normal flight. You can also get turbulence whenever you have wind rushing over the top of a mountain. The leeward side of a mountain can be very turbulent. You can also get turbulence wherever the jet stream is active. There's a high wind speed in the region of the jet stream, but slower right nearby. Thunderstorms can cause turbulence. Everyone knows right nearby the storm, but sometimes even 50 or 100 miles away in the clear air, you can get turbulence from a thunderstorm.
So Neil, how are pilots avoiding severe turbulence now?
For the most part, pilots have several simple options. They listen to the radio to hear if other pilots have already encountered turbulence in that area. So that means somebody's already been hit. They can also look at their onboard radar and try to, based on their experience, can extrapolate what they think might be, but it's not really foolproof. And they can also get a general forecast from the government sources or from their own airline.
There, we got some turbulence now. We're about 3 miles short.
Though seldom damaging to modern aircraft, turbulence is the leading cause of in-flight injuries among passengers and flight crews. On average, 58 injuries aboard aircraft are reported each year. 98% of these injuries occur when unsuspecting passengers or crew are unbuckled or out of their seats when an aircraft encounters turbulence. Currently, there are no instruments on board aircraft to detect turbulence before a plane encounters it. NASA researchers hope to change this by incorporating new turbulence radar systems within existing onboard weather radars. With this new radar system in place, researchers hope to provide pilots with enough warning to either avoid the turbulent area or at least give passengers and flight attendants enough time to return to their seats and buckle up.
The radar system itself will just be a software upgrade to the existing wind shear radar that's already on board the airplanes. The beauty of that, of course, is that since it's just an upgrade to an already certified piece of hardware, it should be relatively inexpensive because you're just incrementally changing what's out there already.
So Neil, tell me how exactly this new system's going to work.
The way it'll work for the pilot is that he'll flip a switch that's labeled turbulence, and then he'll have the new software running. It'll be running mostly at cruise altitudes where pilots typically allow people to move around the cabin. It's not a problem when you're climbing or descending because everyone's already strapped in. So if you have a turbulence encounter there, it's not a big issue because everyone's already buckled in. But we want to help make a difference at altitude when you don't always know there's going to be turbulence out there. And this new product will be able to increase the capability of the system and increase the pilot's confidence in the accuracy of the system, leading to a better and safer environment.
Besides radar, is there any other kind of research with turbulence?
Doing other research, both onboard and otherwise. The onboard system is called the in situ turbulence warning system, and that's a system that uses accelerometers on the airplane to measure what the airplane feels at a given moment. That'll be transmitted automatically to all other airplanes in the general area, along with the location. And a receiving airplane will take that data and adapt it to its own size and class of airplane, and then assess whether or not it's a threat to that airplane. And if it's a threat, then it'll tell the pilot. Another way of enhancing what we have now is improving our forecast capability. And that gets into modeling of the weather and other phenomena of the atmosphere to better understand what the potential is for turbulence.
So Neil, what are your hopes for this project?
Well, the ultimate goal, of course, is to increase the safety and reduce injuries caused by turbulence on the airplane. Right now, it's very easy to prevent injuries when you know you're going to have turbulence. The pilot says, hey, we got to buckle up for a few minutes. Everyone does it, no one gets hurt. But you don't always know the turbulence is coming. So sometimes if you don't know, people are walking around and the plane gets a lurch, someone's going to get hurt. And that happens now. So we know we can make a difference by improving the product.
That's it for this edition of NASA's Destination Tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steele McGonigal.
And I'm Kara O'Brien. For all of us at NASA, we'll see you next time.
Quick check of the sea ice across the Arctic shows us several areas that are mostly open, and that's what you're seeing there in the blue shades there. There is still ice moving around there, and with the winds changing with another front coming through, expect some quick and uncertain changes as the winds shift to more of a north and westerly direction and then return after the front moves a little bit inland after high pressure comes ashore. Remember, you can check the latest sea ice outlook and the forecast anytime for your area of concern. Check the concentration before you go, and remember that all of the ice along the coast right now is very unstable and certainly not shore fast. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice.php is the place to go for that. Here's a look at the winds across southeast now. They'll be fairly light over the next several days. More of a south and easterly flow up the outer coast, all 10 knots from about 4 to 5 foot seas all the way down toward Craig and the Dixon entrance. For the inner channels there, about 10 knots or so. More of a southerly flow north of Stevens Passage all the way up into the Lynn Canal, 15 knots with a 3 foot sea up north, and more of a northwesterly flow through the Clarence Strait, 10 knots with a 2 foot sea on Wednesday. A little bit of a change there on Thursday. Slightly stronger winds up the outer coast, but still not too bad. 3 to 4 foot seas, and looking for stronger winds inside Lynn Canal at 20 knots with a southerly flow bringing 4 foot seas. Otherwise 10 knots for the central and southern parts of the inner channels with a 2 foot sea expected on Thursday. For South Central, look for light winds across Cook Inlet, a little bit more variable as you head up toward the northern end of Turnagain and Knik Arms. Northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, and an east and northeasterly flow across the western Gulf, 15 knots with a 4 to 5 foot sea. Northeasterlies inside of Shelikof Strait will be some of the stronger winds we see in South Central, up to 25 knots with a 5 foot sea. That diminishes on Thursday with winds light and variable in just about all areas. More of a southerly flow inside of Cook Inlet all the way up to Calgan Island and northward, 4 to 5 foot seas there. Otherwise, light and variable winds and small seas, 2 feet inside of Prince William Sound for Thursday. For Bristol Bay, a easterly flow there with a 2-foot sea and 10-knot winds. Otherwise, easterlies up to 15, even 25 knots, especially along the Pacific coast, where 3 to 6-foot seas should be expected on Wednesday. By Thursday, a light and variable wind inside of Bristol Bay is expected with 2-foot seas, 3 to 5-foot seas for the Pacific coast on 15 to 20-knot winds, and easterlies continue across the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula. On the Bering Sea coast, 3-foot seas should be expected there. For the Aleutian, southwesterlies across Kiska and Attu with 6-foot seas on a 15-knot wind. Look for south and westerlies to continue through Adak and Atka, Nikolsky, and then running into more of an easterly flow. That trough of low pressure sitting right about here, and this will be the wet side, and everything here will be more drizzly, low clouds and murky, but east of Nikolsky is where we're expecting considerably more rain there. As you get into Thursday, we'll watch for light and variable winds. Most areas are looking at 10 knots with 4 to 5-foot seas, 6-foot seas around Adak to Kiska. But once again, that boundary is sitting right here across Nikolsky to Unalaska. And with that, we expect more of an east and southeasterly flow. That could come up to about 20 knots with 4 to 6-foot seas on either side. Around the Pribilovs, look for 25-knot winds with a southeasterly flow. Again, that will be ahead of that disturbance with 8-foot seas. Otherwise, 15 to 25 knots across the northern Bering, 4 to 5-foot seas north of Nunivak Island. And as we get into Thursday, look for more of a westerly flow here around St. Lawrence Island, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea, northerlies north of Nunivak, and southeasterlies across the Kuskokwim Delta with a 2-foot sea expected on Thursday. 20-knot winds from the east around St. Paul and St. George with 5-foot seas expected there. The North Slope, looking at northeasterly winds following that frontal passage, 2 to 3-foot seas expected around the Chukchi coast, and northwesterlies across the Beaufort Sea coast. Some of that over the ice out toward Kaktovik. That could be as high as 4-foot seas though for Wednesday. By Thursday, the flow switches around to more of an easterly direction, 15 to 20 knots with seas as high as 5 feet. And for the Chukchi coast, look for south and easterly winds at 15 knots, 2 to 4-foot seas. Looking at more of a southwesterly flow outside of Kotzebue Sound, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea there on Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, showers will continue across the interior and southwestern Alaska as thunderstorms gradually fall apart this evening. Watch for colder air to drop southward across the North Slope. Behind that, some areas of low clouds, drizzle, and maybe some light showers. Light rain and showers across the Gulf Coast, and a better chance for rainfall west of the Pribilovs. You'll see that front dropping further and further south as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, and a better chance of rain for south central and southeast by Thursday and Friday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. See you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
From her rich and fertile valleys to the shores of her icy seas, from her fields and farms and shellfish beds and her many nurseries, for the finest of her flavor, for the freshest by far, choose the things Alaskans bring to the market where you are. Products that we're proud to call our own, and it's all Alaska grown.
Sometimes the best way to find a living is to stay right where you are and study with UAS online. Career-specific distance programs from the University of Alaska Southeast are the fastest way to increase your earning power.
We connect all over the world.